Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning from wherever you log in. It's my pleasure to have another podcast with a very eminent leader in the space of accessibility. I have a veteran who has spent over a decade and a half working in the space of accessibility and across various sectors. She has initially worked uh, for a leading media organization, and now she's working, giving her expertise in the banking space. Uh, it gives me a loud and applaud, and it gives me a lot of pleasure having today on my show on specifically on accessibility, um, Rachna Madhyani ma'am, who has been working in the space of banking for now, and she comes with with a lot of experience in accessibility. Uh, and Before we start, introducing you to the audience, ma'am, would be a great pleasure if you could speak about your journey in the space of accessibility of a decade and a half, and a little bit about yourself and what has been the key learnings that you have, learned over this space. Over to you, ma'am, Rashna, ma'am.
Thank you, Arjun, for that wonderful introduction. Hi everyone. Yes, I have been working in different domains since the start of my career. I started working as an interactive developer, wherein I was actually creating pages uh,
Right.
in HTML and CSS, and then um my journey started when I got my first project sometime around 15 years ago, wherein I
Right.
was asked to implement accessibility because that application was a federal application. It
Okay.
was a banking application, and then the client actually wanted to have it accessible. And that
Mhm.
is when I started learning about accessibility. I started
Right.
reading about the standards that are being followed,
Right.
and that is how I started learning about different disabilities,
Okay.
and then how people with disabilities actually access web, and
Right.
how we can make our websites accessible. As a developer, what is my responsibility so that the page or the website I am coding is accessible to different set of users, as into everyone.
Right.
So it should not exclude someone from accessing that website. It should
Mhm.
be accessible to everyone, right? And that is when I started reading about WCAG guidelines, and started learning about in detail for about those standards, and that
Right.
gave me insights into different disabilities as to what all disabilities people can have out there,
Right.
right? Because
Right.
um, as a kid, I have all only seen people who have physical disability, which is
Right.
they cannot walk or they cannot
Mhm.
hold things. So motor disability, we can say. And then I saw people who are blind, and then I
Right.
didn't know about any other disability that exists because there was no one in my near environment, right? So I was
Ji.
not aware of the other disabilities. And then this was the time when I was working on this project. I got to know about other disabilities that exist in the world, right? So I got to know about color blindness, and then
Right.
cognitive.
Mhm.
Then cognitive in itself is a set of disabilities under it. So there is
Right.
learning disability, there is reading disability, and then there is autism and other disabilities, right? So yes, it actually opened a space, uh, a universe for me to learn about accessibility, right? And that is how my journey started with accessibility.
So, Rachna ma'am, thank you for this eloquent introduction and for bringing the audience to pace about your work. Help me understand this, ma'am. In this 15 years journey, what were those few pivotal moments which you think has shaped your career in the space of accessibility? What was those, specific challenges which you have faced, which you would want to share with the audience? Um, and I ask this from your journey of 15 years. What were those, important milestones which you feel have has helped shape your career in the space of accessibility?
Yes, so I myself faced, situational or short-term disabilities, I would say,
Okay.
twice or thrice in the last 15 years. So I met with an accident and I broke my right wrist. And then,
Right.
I was not able to use mouse for 3 months because my right hand was plastered. And then I
Okay.
had to do everything with my left hand, wherein, I felt like, someone who has permanent disability was,
Mm,
not at all able to access or, use their hands
mm,
for their whole life. How would they be using or how would they be performing their daily life tasks, right? So it
mm,
is not only about surfing net or uh, using the digital information, but then it is about
right.
their daily tasks also, right? And then that made me feel how people with permanent disabilities feel,
Correct.
right? So
Mm,
that actually put me in the shoes of the actual person with disability who has motor
mm,
disability and they can't use mouse. And I literally worked with my left hand for 3 months. All my daily chores also with left hand. So
right.
cooking, kneading the dough, accessing the internet, doing my work, and then doing the household chores and everything with the left hand. It's really tough when you only have one hand to use. And then I used to think about people who some of them don't have both the hands, or maybe they are not able to access both the hands. So how tough it is for people
Right.
with difficult disabilities. And then if we don't think as a web developer or as
Correct.
a designer, when we don't think about them, that means we are actually excluding them, and we are not considering them as our users. So
Okay.
and then I again met with another accident which broke my left wrist. And so I would say both of my wrists are kind of uh, temporary disabled. I would say, I am, because now I have restricted uh, usage, as in, I cannot carry weight, a lot of
Mm,
weight that I used to carry before these accidents.
mm,
So I can only carry small weights or lighter
right.
items, but I cannot carry heavy items with my both my hands, right? So that is the restricted ability that I am having now. Uh, and then I had a cousin who was physically challenged. She was not able to walk. She was a polio victim,
Yeah.
polio sufferer. So, she was not able to walk, and she was only using, um, she was not even, using wheelchair, because uh, the wheelchairs were not available at that time, when she was small.
Correct.
And so she being in our family, I told you so. I just saw people with physical disability, which is like, not able to walk or not able to hold things, and then people who are blind, because there was a blind hostel near my house, right, where I
Acha.
used to live. So uh, that was, when I started thinking about how people who are blind must be, doing their daily tasks, or maybe, how do they access their phones, and how do they study actually at schools? Because in India, we don't have those facilities in schools, right? So we don't have teachers all the blind students, and then there are special schools which are there, and they even don't have teachers with that experience who are into teaching people with disabilities, right?
Correct.
So these things, actually make me think more about as to
Hmm.
what I am doing. I should be doing it with, with my heart, actually,
Absolutely.
so that, I am doing something for the community, and
Correct.
it is not that I am only thinking about people who can do everything and who don't have any disability. but then it
Correct.
is only for today, right? If we all are growing, and at some point of time in our lives, we will be having one or multiple disabilities. So it is not that we don't have a disability today, we will not have a disability tomorrow. But then, if I look at
Correct.
myself, maybe, at the age of 60, I might have a low vision. I might lose some more motion, or, disabilities comes with age also. So, right, if today we don't think about others, tomorrow it might be that, no one thinks about us. So,
No, makes
even we
absolute
will be
sense.
accessing these. Yeah.
No, absolutely, ma'am. And I think the fighter that you are, and I'm so grateful for you to recount your story and how you had yourself had experiences. And what I believe is, and it resonates with what I had a similar talk with a past guest in the same podcast, and that was last week. I think for those people who become a part of this sector, or those who passionately um, deliver each day and give their all towards this cause, God also molds them or prepares them for this journey. So they very closely get to understand and interact, and I think that is way of that's the way God teaches them on what is the pain associated. And because we have something which is that close, that prepares us to be more passionate about the cause that we take up, and that then reflects in the work which we do, and that is so relevant and so important.
Yes.
And thank you for sharing your story with us about this. Now, moving on to the next question. In the world of finance, how does accessibility play a crucial role in improving the customer experience? And have you had any specific examples where an accessibility improvement has delivered better business for the brands?
Yes. So looking at the banking sector, right? Banks also have customers who have disabilities, right? But
Correct.
then we hardly think about those users. So,
Correct.
being a banker, what uh, people think is, they always think about the percentage of that sector, as in, so it is the majority of users or majority of their customers does not have disability, right?
Correct.
And it is
Correct.
always like, you are developing for majority. And then
Correct.
there is only a small sector that has disabilities, right?
Correct.
And then it's like, uh, for that small sector or for that small set of customers or users, if you are not developing, or you are excluding those features just to ensure that majority of their customers are happy, does
Mhm.
not bring you business, right?
Okay.
So it's like excluding those potential customers who are out there, who actually want to be part of your bank, who actually
Correct.
want to use your bank facilities. But since your websites are not accessible, they are not coming to you. So it's not the people who are disabled are not
Mhm.
able to be your customer or not able to use your facilities. It
Correct.
is the bank who's actually losing on the potential business which is
Absolutely.
in that small sector, right? So we need to start thinking about making our applications accessible so that
Mhm.
more customers we can have from different sectors, right? So we should not exclude people with disabilities. We should think about them. We should
Correct.
think about, if a person who does not have any disability can make payments online, a person who is visually challenged should also be make payments online. He should
Mhm.
not be asked to come to the branch, talk to the people sitting out there, customer
Correct.
relationship managers who are sitting in the branch, and then asking for help in
Makes
making
sense.
the payments. It should not be the case, right? So if one person is able to do the online payment, everyone should be able to do that, irrespective
Exactly.
of their ability. right? It should not be dependent on that one person is able to do this and the other person is not able to do this. So, whosoever is able to do it. Who is not able to do, come to the branch and we are here to help you out. That should not be the case.
Makes
So,
sense.
when we make websites accessible, right? So, if I make the bank website accessible, let's talk about ICICI or HDFC or any other big bank, right?
Correct.
Uh, if they make their websites accessible, right, they will have more customers coming in because
Correct.
people who have disability, right,
Hmm.
people who are visually challenged, if they find a website which is accessible, they
Hmm.
never go to another website, right?
Makes sense.
If they have found one website, one bank, one application which is accessible, they are so
Right.
loyal that they will not leave that website or bank or application, right? They will always use that because they are able to use it, right? It has
Hmm.
accessibility implemented so nicely that they don't have any issues in using those websites, right? So if I
Makes
am
sense.
able to access the website using keyboard alone, let's say, right? There is
Hmm.
nothing mouse dependent on the HDFC website. I would never go to some other bank. I because I am able to use everything using the keyboard alone because I have problem with my mouse. I cannot hold the mouse for long hours. Or
Correct.
maybe I cannot hold it at all. Let's take
Hmm.
an example that I have a problem that I cannot hold the mouse at all. I can only do the key press on keyboard, right?
Hmm.
So if I am able to use the application, if I am used to enter my information using the keyboard only, I can make the payment using the keyboard only. I can do everything using the keyboard. Then I would love to be, uh, part of that bank. And I will not think of changing only because I am getting all these facilities on their website
Hmm.
without any difficulty.
No,
So
absolutely no.
accessibility does improve, the facilities that you are providing, and then it does get you uh, business, right? So you are
Makes
not losing on business, but you are making
garner.
more business when you are making your website successful.
And it's not a very heavy cost. I think it's a popular myth that and that actually leads me to the next question, ma'am. That there's a myth that you can either have usability, stroke accessibility, or you can have security in transactions, but having the combination is not possible, right? I
It's
would
it's
want to
completely
address
a myth.
this.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, it's completely a myth, right?
Okay.
So it is not that if a website is accessible, it will not have security. No, it is not.
Hmm. Okay.
So it is not that if a website is asking you for your Aadhaar number, right?
Hmm.
Let's take an example. So it is not that since the website is asking for your Aadhaar number, the site is not secure. So
Hmm.
the websites, the banks, the organizations, right? They put security in their code. They have that security teams who take care of that. The user information is not being lost
Okay.
or is not being shared with other people around. Who are around the person who is actually using the website. So, for example, right? So,
Right.
Aadhaar number or password that we enter, right? So, they are all masked
Hmm.
actually.
Correct.
So, you
Correct.
don't get to hear the Aadhaar number if
Hmm.
I am using a software that speaks out everything because I am visually challenged, right?
Correct.
So if I
Correct.
am using a screen reader, it will read the information, but since I have masked the data, right?
Okay. Okay.
All the important information I have masked. So that will not announce the number, that will only announce it as star. So if there is, a person standing behind me looking on my screen, what am I doing? And I am entering
Hmm.
my password. Since
Right.
my password does not appear as characters, it only appears as stars. I am
Hmm.
securing my website. I am securing my
Okay.
password. So it is not that security is not taken into consideration.
Hmm.
All the organizations, all banks take security in consideration and
Hmm.
making their websites accessible so that both of these things are combined and the user is not losing on their information being shared with the other people standing on them or sitting next to them.
Okay. So, ma'am, when we say that there can be a balance created between not hampering with accessibility whilst not compromising on the security concerns too, because I understand it's a very uh, heavily, you know, monitored, and a lot of, there's a need for a lot of restrictions and constraints towards financial services, and rightly so. It's a heavily regulated market, and absolutely important also, given that you're in a way managing the hard-earned money of your customers. So security, it goes without saying, it cannot be compromised on, but then also creating a balance so that it is accessible for all, and something which is important to the subject of the day, and that is about not compromising um, on the independent usage for an end customer, may that be a person with disability or otherwise. So, how does one create a solution which is equibalanced? Uh, and is that a possible solution also? Because I understand a lot of viewers of this podcast are those who uh, yearn for an independent solution. We had a past guest who mentioned about why can't we have talking ATMs, and how he has been working towards that direction. Apart from that, why can't we have entertainment, which is like online media? May that be the likes of Amazon Prime, so on and so forth. Why can't we have the films which are released also having adjustments made for a person with disability, so that they can have the same level of entertainment which everyone is entitled to, irrespective of the disability. So coming back to the question, can we have a solution wherein accessibility is not compromised and security constraints are also not anyways uh, made in a compromised way? Is that a possible solution?
Yes, yes. When we talk about talking ATMs, right, we do have uh, we do have talking ATMs now in India also. So if I go to HDFC ATM,
Hmm.
right, it does talk to me. So it reads whatever I am doing on the screen,
Hmm.
right? So whenever there is a menu, it says select your option, and then whenever I choose an option, it reads that option to me, right? And
Right.
then they have that headphone jack also on their ATMs, right? So if
Hmm.
you think that there might be some other person, even though it's a rule that there should not be more than one person in the ATM, right?
Right.
So there cannot be anyone in that cabin where the ATM machine is kept. There should be
Hmm.
only one person. But then there are banks who have, 2 or 3 ATMs in one room itself. So
Correct.
there can be 3 users at a time, right, using the ATMs because there are 3 machines. So in that case, if you want to listen to the ATM, you can actually carry your jack, your headphones, and then you can use that uh, in the ATM, and then you can hear what is being said on the screen, and then you can use it accordingly. I
Excellent.
know the ATMs are not completely accessible in India,
Yes.
but I think we have accessible ATMs in other countries. So because it's not a strict law here in India
Hmm.
yet,
Hmm.
we need to work on having a strict law and then implementing that law that all ATMs should have this level of accessibility so that
Hmm.
people with different disabilities can access the ATM machines, right?
Okay.
Uh, so it is not about compromising on security or compromising on accessibility because compromising on either one will not
Yeah.
have a solution, right? Will not have a strong solution, I would say, which anyone would like to have, right? So
Hmm.
it's a need that we need to have a balance between security and accessibility. So it is like if we are implementing a talking ATM, we should also think about how can we make it secure. So,
Correct.
right. So, and then banks do think about that. It is not that banks don't think about it. So that is
Mm.
why we have that audio jacks, and then wherein the user can use their headphones, and they will able to listen to it, and there is no one else who can listen to their information, right?
Makes
Uh,
sense.
so that is, yeah.
So, ma'am,
And then we are not losing on accessibility also. We are making it accessible to people with who are visually challenged can also access the ATM machines. But we do need to, improve on that because I think users might have difficulty in finding out the
mm,
card slot where it is and from where
mm,
the money will, they have to collect the money from. So the money slot is sometimes it is at the bottom in some ATMs, it is
mm,
just under the screen. I have seen ATMs of some banks have it, just under the screen. So it is, I find it difficult for those people,
navigate.
who yeah, to navigate, where to collect the money from because it only says collect your money, but it does
Mm,
not tell you how to collect
very
or
correct.
where to collect it from, where this slot is actually.
Makes sense.
So those things I think we need to, start considering and start thinking about.
So, ma'am, I think there's a lot of room for standardization then, that all machines across
Yes.
banks should follow the same standards. And one thing very important you mentioned about how there were accessible ATMs which are there across the world, and I think India is still catching up to those. Uh, Call me an eternal optimist and an also very impatient one, but I ask this on behalf of my audience. How soon or how far do you see are we from the realization of this happening in India? Do you see a futuristic timeline to it? If you could want to touch that question.
Uh, so timeline I would not be able to talk about because you know, we have to do a lot in
Okay.
the accessibility field, right?
Mm.
Even though government has started looking into it, so we have Accessible India campaign,
Yes.
we have laws coming in, and then we have all those things, and then but still I feel that people who actually have to work on those or who have been given the responsibility of
Mm.
enforcing that Accessible India campaign and then accessibility laws, right?
Right. Right.
Uh, we need to have some strict uh, conditions, right? We need to have that. That
Makes sense.
so it has to be enforced actually. Currently, it
Makes
is
sense.
not being enforced. It is just that we
Mm.
have the law passed, but then it is not being enforced or it is not implemented, right? So
Right.
it is still that organizations or companies or banks are still not following the accessibility law, right?
Okay.
So it is not that all the bank applications are completely accessible. They have accessibility issues. But since
Mm.
there is no law, right? There is no law as to if the website is inaccessible, the users or the customers can file a lawsuit, right? We
Mm.
don't have
Mm.
those uh, provisions in India, right? So being a user, if I am not able to access their website or if I am not able to do something which other people are able to, right, using the keyboard, I
Mm.
still don't, I will not go to the court to, file a case against them that, I am not able to access their website and all that. So this has to come to India also, wherein everyone thinks about implementing. If there is a law, they have to abide by it. Currently,
I
we are
think
not abiding by the law, right?
the RPWD Act of 2016 has spelled the law. What is happening now is that, unlike the West, the litigations which are happening are not happening expeditiously. So businesses
Yes.
still believe that you know there is a lot of leeway, and we can misuse that leeway because uh, there's also a factor of lethargy. What is the immediate incentive, or what is the punishment, which should be the driver for
Yes.
something to be implemented immediately? If something can happen tomorrow, why don't postpone it for day after? So that's where we are stuck. as of now. And I
Yes.
think uh, what would happen futuristically is that as the advocacy and awareness around accessibility will spread, the litigations, unfortunately, the as we have the carrot, and so we also have the stick. The stick and the carrot combination will play its role, and hopefully, sooner than later, we will have a more accessible digital workplace. Because if we can have a content disability in place, is when we can talk about why aren't more representation of people with disabilities happening in the workforce. Till we don't have that, till we don't have accessible information, where do we, how would decimation of those information which are available be possible? So I think that's where we are stuck, to my views on this particular point. But coming back to on a next important aspect, uh, as you incorporate the user feedback, has there been an experience in which you have taken end user feedback and you have incorporated that into the accessibility journey? Has that happened?
Yes. So user research, or I would say, user testing helps a lot, right? So when you go to the actual user to ask them what are their pain points while accessing the website, right?
Hmm.
That makes sense. That will give you the actual user experience, right? So
Hmm.
if ICICI asks me if I am having any pain points in accessing their website,
Right.
I would be the best person to tell them that yes, there are issues that I am facing with your website, and this is something, this is point 1, 2, 3 that you can look into from accessibility perspective, right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
let's say if a bank has a visually challenged customer, right? And if they go to that user and that customer and ask them for their experience with the website,
Hmm.
that person would give them more insight into what are the issues, right?
Hmm.
Instead of a QA person testing it from the user
Correct.
perspective, because the QA person himself does not have that disability, right?
Hmm.
Whatever feels best to them, they will try to get the application to that level. But then it is the actual user who would tell you that I want it this way. If it would have been implemented this way, this would have been more accessible to me. Right.
Makes sense.
So for example, we have menus which open on hover, right?
Hmm.
So we use mouse, we hover over a menu item and it opens a sub menu. We go to first item, it again opens a sub menu, which is for the first item. So I go to account menu, it opens the accounts overview menu for me, right? Maybe and then on HDFC it gives me some options, right? Pay, and then so I have three options wherein it has inquire, request, and then change options maybe. And all these three options, I have some hover menus. Let's say it is not there on HDFC, but I am just giving you an example. Let's say we have hover option. There is another bank who has the hover functionality, maybe. So
Hmm.
that is actually asking me to use mouse. But being a person who cannot hold mouse for long term, I will not be able to access that hover menu, right? So that means whatever options are given in that menu, I will never be able to access, right?
Hmm.
Because you are not giving me that facility, right? So being a keyboard user, I will not be able to access that,
Makes
right?
sense.
Similarly, if I am a colorblind person, right, and you have used colors to define something, right? So maybe I was taking a loan and I was filling in the online form, right?
Right.
And then I filled in the wrong email address. The format was not correct. And I don't know, you show error messages. So if you must have seen, right, it says your email format is not correct, please correct it. And
Hmm.
then you have these error messages appearing. So some applications does not give you error messages, they just change the color of the
Right.
fields that you were entering information into, right? So being a colorblind person, being a
How will you get?
you know,
Hmm.
having that color blindness, and I see red and green as brown.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I will not know, right, if that is an error or if that is a success, because for me, red and green both are brown, right?
Correct.
And that
Correct.
field appears brown to me. So how will I know that there was an issue?
Makes sense.
if the email format was correct or not, because that message was not coming up, right? So implement it is only the user who would be telling you all these, because it is the user who is facing these issues, right? So being a user, I would be the best person to tell you these issues, that your website has these issues, kindly fix these issues so that I can use it uh, properly next time, right? For now, I will fill in the physical form maybe, because I don't know what this information is. But I would love to have this feature online because that makes me independent.
Mm.
I can do it on my own because it is all online. I don't have to come to your branch. I don't have to spend extra time spending on the road in the traffic,
Mm.
right? It's not only about going to the branch, but then it takes another 1 or 2 hours if you are in Gurugram. In Mumbai,
Mm.
it will take you more time because there is a
Yeah.
huge jam on the roads, right?
Yes.
So you cannot go to a bank at 9 a.m. because that is the peak hours when you have traffic jam on the roads. Even in
Mm.
Gurugram, Maharashtra, or you go to Bangalore, right? So it is not only about one state or city. It is about so it's if you get anything digital, make it accessible. Don't
Makes sense.
do something halfway. If
Mm.
you are implementing accessibility, do get it tested by the actual users before you release it to the user. So that is why user acceptance testings are there, right? So UATs happen in organizations wherein they get it tested by actual users. And it is not
Mm.
only 1 or 2 users, they have hundreds of users who are doing the user acceptance testing, right? So they ask actual users and then get their applications tested, right? And they get the feedback from actual users and they implement that.
So, ma'am, this feedback generation even happens specifically to test for accessibility, and is this like more like a agency-driven model, or is it like it is made available online? I ask this because there might be some participants who may be interested in making a career in the space of providing feedbacks to newly developed products. So like you mentioned about there could be a new function, or there could be a new uh, website, there could be some multiple aspects of it which may need end user and specifically disabled users point of view, or whether or not it is accessible. So how does organizations go about this? Do they give it as a responsibility to a vendor, or is it more like an open source project wherein companies or where individuals are asked to comment on it? How does it go about?
It depends. It depends. So
Okay.
that sometimes, websites or organizations do open it as a beta version, right? And they
Mm.
release it for the user testing, right? So they ask for feedback. They ask
Okay.
users to give them feedback, and then they fix those issues that they receive as feedback. They implement that, and then they again get it tested, right? So that is opening it to the world,
Audience.
to all the users, right? And then get the feedback from them. It's a
Makes sense.
real-time feedback. And then
Okay.
there are vendors who provide you with the users, right? So you tell
Okay.
them your need, and they will provide you with those users, right?
Okay.
And then they will, the organization then, creates that environment, and then they
Mm.
provide the URL to those users and they do it
Mm.
testing at their locations. So it is not that they hire them, or all those users have to be in the organization. They
Mm.
can be anywhere, remote also, right? And
Okay.
they test and they provide the feedback, being the
Mm.
actual user, right? So yes, there is scope, and I would love to talk about it. So
Makes sense.
I was also thinking about, because
Mm.
people who have disabilities will be the best ones to,
Best off.
tell you, yes, best ones to test your applications for accessibility. Right?
Makes sense.
So if you ask a screen reader user to test your application for screen reader compliance, right?
Right.
Uh,
Versus
me
a
as
human.
one user,
Yeah.
or me as a QA person, right? And
Mm.
then the actual user who's actually using screen readers for years,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
He would be able to give you more issues
Mm.
and more actual issues or valid points, right,
Hmm.
that they would be facing,
Facing.
right, instead of me, because
Hmm.
right, I cannot feel that, I cannot experience that which
Hmm.
they can actually experience while using the application, because
Also,
they
now
have more experience with screen readers. I don't have.
yeah. Also, what happens is often there is oversight. So people who are not disabled would, not be able to observe the minute problems because they may just uh, broadly uh, have a UAT done on it. And once the UAT passes, it is not necessary for the public for which it is built or for whom the solution is built are also, completely on board or also been asked their opinion whether or not they assume it to be accessible to their expected standards. And the testing is done by a person who's not part of the affected audience for whom this has been built. So I think that's where a huge gap
Yes,
remains to be addressed.
yes. And that is why, I recommend, or I would recommend, right? We can have people with disabilities who are interested in, joining this task force wherein they can help organizations do the actual user testing, right?
Makes
From an
sense.
actual user perspective. We can actually get these people on board, uh,
Hmm.
not if the organizations are not interested in hiring them permanently, but still
Yeah,
we can have some kind of uh, you know
a freelancing
some kind
setup.
of engagement, yeah, maybe freelancing sort of, right, wherein the organizations give it to a vendor, where
Hmm.
or some NGOs like yours, right? So
Right,
wherein we are helping the people with disabilities to get into the workforce, and then help them uh, earn on themselves, right, to be independent, right, and then helping them learn new skills. So if someone is not aware of, maybe, so I was supporting one NGO wherein
hmm.
they were supporting, people with disabilities who come from different cities, states
Right,
of India, and then, they were staying in Delhi to pursue their higher studies.
Right.
So, when I met them, 99% of them wanted to join the government jobs, because
That is the problem. That's
one,
the
there
true
is
problem.
that quota, right? There is
Yeah,
that quota
two
for
percent.
people with disabilities,
Hmm.
right? And then it's only 2%. But then there are a lot of people out there who are looking for that job, right?
Right, right,
And there
right.
is huge competition there also. Why
Excessive
can't
competition.
we think about, yes, why can't
Hmm.
we think about increasing those jobs, right?
Hmm.
Not only the government sector, but MNCs can also start looking into, hiring people with disabilities. That would make a great difference, right?
Absolutely.
And that would
Absolutely.
give
Hmm.
the opportunities to all. When we are talking about accessibility, it is not only about making your digital information accessible, but it should be, giving the equal rights, providing equality even in the workforce also. So we can have diverse workforce,
Hmm.
right, with different abilities, so we can have visually challenged people, we can have people with motor disabilities, we can have anyone working with us, right? That there should
Makes
be
sense.
no restriction. We should think on those lines, as to there should be uh, no favorism while hiring. So there should be no bias actually. We should not look at someone from, if this person is disabled, or this person is having this disability, he might not be able to do this. Before working with him, you cannot judge him, right? If
Exactly.
he would be able to or he would not be able to. If we are not giving them a chance, they will never be able to show if they are able to or not, right? So
That's
we
the
need to give
perennial
them the
problem.
opportunity actually.
The I think the biggest problem with the space of accessibility and the space of inclusion uh, is that the prejudice. People are judged even before given the opportunity. So what happens
Yes.
is boundary conditions or constraints are developed even before the person enters the premises, and often that is the biggest impediment for inclusion. And I don't say that it's specific to India. I think that's a global problem. to be addressed. It's just that some have progressed
Yes.
further and some are still lagging on that path. Unfortunately, that's the reality, and I think people like you can do a great job because you speak so passionately and vociferously for them that I think if we have such representatives in more organizations, we would have a better place and a better future for the people for whom NABID serves. And ma'am, just the last thoughts before we conclude this session. Uh, in terms of the future of accessibility, what are those technologies that you think will shape or pave the way ahead? And please, if you could address this answer from a point of scalability and affordability, because we are trying to create solutions for those who don't have the means and the resources. So, ma'am, your answer to it, please.
So one thing the first thing I will talk about is making these softwares accessible, right? Softwares as in, so screen readers, right, are very expensive. Uh, Everyone cannot afford it, right? So we need to have affordable, less expensive, or maybe, government can start looking into, providing screen readers to people who actually need it, right? So for visually challenged,
Mm.
they cannot do anything without a screen reader. We do have open source screen readers available, but then the best or the good ones are paid ones, right?
Right, right.
So we can look into the way it is, like, providing wheelchairs to people who
Mm.
have motor disabilities. You can think about, providing the base screen readers to people who are visually challenged. Right?
Makes sense.
That would actually give them access to that software, and then,
Mm.
they can actually, that would help them actually, to work with it, because everyone is not able to afford these softwares, right?
It's pretty
But
expensive.
everyone needs it, right? Everyone
Yes.
needs it. So it should be accessible to everyone. It should not be only available to a set of people who can afford it. So we need to look into making the technology affordable first,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we can think of creating an open source screen reader, which is, uh, to the level of the best ones, maybe.
Yes.
We can
Yes.
start
Yes.
thinking about that, right? And then we can open it to the developers across the world, right?
Mm.
If
Mm.
if they are interested in working towards that product, everyone can,
Right.
just collaborate, work on it, uh,
Mm.
and then, create something which is open source, which is easily available, affordable, and which we can, share with whosoever needs it, right? So without
Absolutely.
any fees, or, we can have a nominal fees which everyone can afford actually.
Forward. Yeah.
So yeah.
Right, ma'am. No, I think that's where the solution lies. Also, there is, like you rightly said, if we have wheelchairs which can be given and or can be subsidized, we can also scale, and if we can build the technology which can be affordable, uh, especially for the visually impaired audience, screen readers should be made as affordable with the intervention of technology to the extent possible. When with that thought, ma'am, and very grateful for you for the insights. And uh, I also have the honor of having the first lady guest on my podcast. And thank you so much for participating with that. And and really, really insightful discussion, especially with the solution that you presented. Thankful for this month and look forward to the opportunity to remaining further engaged, especially on the subject of UAT testing and creating a freelance community, if that could be possible. Look forward to your stewardship to that.
Yes, Arjun, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about accessibility more.
Right.
Because I feel we don't talk about accessibility in India a lot. We need to create that mindset. We need to work on creating that culture of accessibility, wherein, we are thinking about including people with disabilities, uh, in our everyday tasks. So it should not be uh, about exclusion. It should be about inclusion. So we should not think of them as a person who's not able to. We should think on the lines that person is able to do, but then he might need some assistive device or assistive technology to perform that task. It is not
Makes sense.
that a person cannot do anything, but then they might need some support or some software or some technology to perform that task. So no one
Makes sense.
is unable. It is just that they need something to do that task that the other person is able without that assistive technology.
Makes sense. But thank you so much, ma'am. It was such a pleasure interacting with you, and look forward to staying connected.
Sure, sure, Arjun.
Take care. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.